Hi, this is for 11:30. If you missed class, here is the questions that need to be submitted by Monday evening. Here we go. So, if we remember, yesterday we spoke at the end of our back and forth Shakla Vitaria about this very first Mishnah of the Talmud, very first Talmud piece that relates to the very first Mishnah of the Talmud. So this is the very first Mishnah and the very first piece of Talmud, and we noticed that there was right. We said, "What? Why is the Mishnah written in this strange way? It shouldn't have. It should have started with morning, not evening. Oh no, it's fine to start with morning. Here's another example why it should start with morning. Oh no, but if it starts with morning, how come I see a case where it's not starting with morning, but we have a choice and it's starting with evening? Oh, don't worry about that. That's just because the Mishnah is trying to be stylistically and aesthetically appropriate in kind of an ABB model, not AB. Um, um, by the way, I do want to point out something that is significant. That you may notice here that the Torah. Here's an example of the Torah right here when it's talking about Eliezer finding a wife for Yitzchak, and Eliezer goes to Haran, finds a woman who is kind of who is at a well, and he says, Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, says, "Pray tell me." He said, "Whose daughter are you? Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" And she replies, "I am the daughter of Betuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." She went on, "There's plenty of straw, feed at home." So your first question of the day is I am a daughter of Betuel. What is that in answer to the question number one or question number two? And the second one, there's plenty of straw. Question number one, question number two. So Rashi answers the following here. Also, look at Rashi's answer here, and you will notice that Rashi is saying something that kind of relates to our Mishnah. So which one would Rashi say of these two is more logical? That's question number three. Okay. Um, and so, but let's look more at the nafkamina, at the takeaway of the takeaway of this Mishnah itself. Like this Mishnah is saying, hey, um, you're getting so kind of perturbed about why the Mishnah is starting to talk about Shacharit at night versus during the day. And my answer is what? What's kind of my answer in the end? Sure, my answer um, is like, what is my answer in relationship to the idea of should I be taking words really seriously or should I not worry so much about it? So, what's the answer? That's question number four. And so we see actually the answer is kind of something like, don't be so concerned about each and every word. Sometimes it's just written the way it's written for other reasons, like, and almost like stop taking yourself so seriously. Now, this is kind of interesting because actually we have an idea of this actually when we speak about Torah itself. Now, you remember that we spoke about Rabbi Akiva being the rabbi who basically each and every word he's going to try to find a reason why it's there and why God places it there. But there's another guy named Rabbi Ishmael who has a very different idea about how things like this work. So if you see there's something called an infinitive absolute. And do me a favor, and for question number six, look up and write down what is an infinitive absolute in English. Okay. And in Hebrew, it's when these two kind of verby kind of things come together. So chalamti, mot yumat, ra'o tir'eh, lindor neder. So these kind of verby words come together. And Rabbi Akiva looks at those words and says, "Oh my goodness, when you see those two things together, it's supposed to teach us something very specific about something God wants, some kind of meaning that's hidden in there." But Rabbi Ishmael says, no, 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 no. Dibra Torah Kilshon B'nei Adam. Dibra Torah kilshon b'nei Adam, and it means Dibra Torah. The Torah speaks ke like lashon language, b'nei Adam of people. The Torah speaks in the language of people. So my question number, I think it's 8. 8 is, what actually does that mean? What does that mean? The Torah speaks in the language of people. And we went over this in class, and really what it's trying to say is, you know what, the Torah sometimes is written the way it is, so we, the people, will understand that God isn't always writing with hints and stuff. God is sometimes write in a way that we understand it. Meaning, in the same way, like we just said, don't take yourself so seriously, sometimes we shouldn't take words in the Torah that appear to be strange so seriously. So now I want to look at these 3 kind of related messages from our very first Mishnah and very first lines of the first Torah, of the first Talmud. And my theory is that we could have started the Talmud anywhere, but there's a reason why Dafka this Mishnah is written, and there's a reason why Dafka these words, this conversation of the Talmud is where it is. And the question is, what is it trying to teach us? So let me just go through the 3 things that we've learned about this very first Mishnah and first Talmud that goes with it. One is, we looked at Rabban Gamliel, who basically has a ruling that is a pretty lax ruling, a not so serious ruling. And he knows about it, but his kids don't know about it. And all of a sudden, he decides to allow his kids to know about it. So what is that kind of talking about? That's question number 9. Then we have another case of the Mishnah itself can go ahead and talk about anything. It can answer this question of when do we say the Shema at night, and it can answer it in any way it wants. And it specifically decides to bring in something about the priests from the time when the priests eat their truma, eat their food cut. Now, again, the Talmud, the Mishnah is written at a time when the priests no longer function because the temple is no longer around. So it's bringing in the priests for some kind of reason. Now, in class, we talked about some people said, well, it's bringing in the priest to say, we don't want to fight with the priests. We don't want them to feel like they're being left out of this, that the things that we're actually saying, we're going to use some of what the priest did as proof, or some of what the Torah tells us priests should do as proof. But then another person in class, other people in class said, actually, it's trying to kind of gain authority over the priest, that actually this action of saying the Shema is in some way doing this, is equally as important as what the priest used to do. And this is an action that everyone can do versus this being an action that only some people can do. So all of a sudden, the saying the Shema is the new way that we stay Jewish. The priest eating the truma is an old way of being Jewish. Okay, so we're going to call that number 2. And number 3 is this idea of don't take yourself so seriously. Sure, we understand that there's this Torah idea to take every single word of God seriously, but sometimes you just don't have to do that. So is there a theory, a grand theory that you can make linking all of these 3 kind of ideas together as to kind of what the first Mishnah or Talmud is doing? And we're going to call that question 10, I believe. All right. So now we're back to Hanukkah. So we started by asking the question, what oils do we use for lighting a Shabbos candle, and what oils can we not use? And we spoke about different ideas of why you choose one oil over another. Someone said Oneg Shabbat, right, making Shabbat special, so we use high quality oil. One other thing we need to know is that there is a rule that you're allowed to use and benefit from the fire of Shabbat candles. Lior brought up in class, oh my goodness, actually, that's very different from Hanukkah candles, because isn't there a rule that we're not allowed to benefit or use the light of Hanukkah candles? And we know that actually to be the case right now because we have something called the shamash, or the candle that we can use, meaning on Hanukkah, there's a candle we can use. That's that higher candle called the shamash, and there's candles that we can't use, and those are the candles in the Hanukkah. So, so Lior, so again, so the question is, why is it that we would actually try to use higher quality oil when we're using when we're lighting candles on Shabbat, specifically in reference to this idea of that you are allowed to use the light, meaning what happens if you're allowed to use the light of Hanukkah and you're using low quality oil? Okay, that's question number 11. Okay, so so again, we can answer these questions right here. Here is a list of oil you can use for lighting your Shabbat candles. All are high quality oil because that's question number 12. Here's a list of oils you can't use for lighting your Shabbos candles. All are low quality oils that might. That's question 13. Fill in the blank. So question number 14. What are we worried about when using oil for Shabbat candles? And how and 15, how does high quality oil solve this problem? Okay. This is probably what an oil lamp looked like. Your oil was placed in here and your wick is over here. Okay. So the more oil you put in, maybe the higher light. Okay. So now we're up to the Talmud piece here. So how do we get from candle lighting of Shabbat candles to Hanukkah, to the Hanukkah? Well, it starts out with this phrase that we see repeated once, twice, three times. The third time, it's about Hanukkah, right? So and the phrase that's same is uh, all those things that the rabbi said in the Mishnah, we don't light on, we don't use we don't use that oil on Shabbat. You can use it for lighting a bonfire. All the stuff that the rabbi said you can't use for oil lighting on Shabbat, you should also not use when if the temple of God was standing, you wouldn't have used it there. And now we get to our statement about Hanukkah. Rav Huna says wicks and oil that the Chachamim say don't use those wicks and oils for Shabbat, something about Hanukkah. And we're going to see is, so that's how we get from what we're going to see is we're going to actually see three ideas about Hanukkah and using oils and wicks that we can't use on Shabbat. And those first person who's going to talk is Rav Huna. Next person who's going to talk is Rav Chisda. Next person who's going to talk is Rav Zera. And for each of them, they're going to say something about Hanukkah and using oils and wicks. And afterwards, we're going to ask the question, my taima de Rab Huna, my taima de Rav Chisda, my taima de Rav Zera. And my taima means what? It means what is the reason for each of these people's views. So you're going to get their view, then we're going to evaluate. Get the view, evaluate. Get the view, evaluate. And by the way, in the end of this all, the ruling that we're going to come up with is the ruling of Rabbi Zera. And so interesting. So Rabbi Zera is the idea number 3, and that's what we're going to go with. And there's a principle of Talmud that says basically hilchata kebatrai. The law, when we're trying to figure out what the law is, in this case, we go by the final speaker. And the idea is that probably these guys are not all in the same room and just he got the last word in, but they're speaking over generations of time. They're actually in different generations. And I spoke about in class that often when people study Talmud, there's a feeling that by knowing when these rabbis lived, you're going to get a better sense of how the Talmud works. And probably Rav Huna lived first, earlier. Rav Chisda is a later generation, and Rav Zera is an even later generation. So that principle is hilchata kebatrai. And why is it that you think, and this is question number 16, why is it that law of hilchata, the law is according to the last works? Okay. And so let's move on. So the last issues we want to speak about is this. So when we're speaking about Hanukkah, candle lighting, and oil, there's a couple big issues we need to speak about that's going to help us understand this sugya, this piece of Talmud. So first of all, here's a question. Is the Hanukkah mitzvah for candles to be lit and that's it? Or does it need to be lit for a certain amount of time? So that's question number 17. What's your answer to that question? Okay, and number 18 is how does your answer affect what kind of oil you should be using, good quality oil or bad quality oil? Question number 19, can I use the light from a Hanukkah? Okay, what's your answer to that question, 19? And how does your answer to that question affect good oil or bad oil using? And the third is, because Hanukkah is 8 days long, there's always a day when Hanukkah candles are lit on Shabbat. And how should that fact, what should be, why might I want good quality oil on that day? That's question number 21. And why might I want, and what are the issues with bad quality oil on that day? That's question number 22. Okay. And really, that's that's really where we left it. Okay. And then we left it right there. Okay. Thank you.